Hi there, welcome to Chapter 3, The Renaissance. We're going to stay with the church and we're going to keep talking about polyphonic music. In fact, polyphony is going to get a lot more dense as we move through this. We start with Dufay. He's a guy who sort of helps us make that transition from the Middle Ages into the Renaissance. And he's followed by a guy named Ockingham. Ockingham was a bass. He sang bass. So he added a fourth, sometimes a fifth, or even a sixth voice to the Mass, making it even thicker and more densely polyphonic. He starts messing more with textures. Probably most importantly, though, he taught this guy, Josquin du Pré. Now, Josquin wrote a lot of Mass settings, but we have him here with a motet. Now, by the time we get to this period in the Renaissance, the motet from what you saw in the Middle Ages has changed a bit. It's usually on a sacred text. There were a few secular ones, but it's usually also in Latin, particularly for the sacred text ones. And this is the first setting you're going to see of the Ave Maria. Now, in the last chapter, you saw the Kyrie several times from the Mass Ordinary setting, and we're following that text as we go through a long time. All the semester, we'll see different composers and how they set the different 5 movements of the Mass Ordinary. We're going to do the same thing with the Ave Maria text. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. You are blessed among women. You guys know that. So this is the first setting you're going to see of that particular text setting. We're going to deal with that text throughout the different periods of music and see how different composers dealt with the same material. Again, click play, it plays along. You see the Latin text here. Here's the English translation as you follow. Absolutely beautiful piece of music. Josquin was a really inventive composer and probably one of the most densely polyphonic of the entire period. There was a group called the Council of Trent. Now, we tend to present it very two-dimensional in music history. Council of Trent said there's too much polyphony in the church. People don't understand the words. Stop it. And that's just not true at all. The Council of Trent met for over 30 years. They dealt with a wide array of topics dealing with church liturgy, indulgences, a lot of different things. But for our discussion, it is about the music. And they said it's too polyphonic. And the guy who responded to their demands, historically, is this guy, Palestrina. Now, there's a false story that Palestrina went running into the Council of Trent at the last moment and saved the day and saved polyphony with a piece called the Pope Marcellus Mass. It's absolutely not true. But it's a good story, so we tell it anyway in music history. It is true that he responded well to the demands of the Council of Trent, and he changed the way people were using polyphonic texture. Monophonic, one line of music. Polyphonic, many lines of music that weave in and out of one another. What he does is kind of a middle ground. It's called homophony, homophonic music. Now we've got many lines of music. We have individual voices, but a lot of times he has them line up. So they're singing different notes. They're singing beautiful harmony, but they're singing it rhythmically at the same time. Everything lines up. And then as he gets into a line of text, we know what the words are. Then he lets it break into polyphony for a while, and then he brings it back to more homophonic writing as you get toward the end of a phrase. You have a different Mass Ordinary movement here. It's the Gloria, and that's intentional because it's a lot more text intensive than the Kyrie. So I want you to see how he deals with these different lines of text and how he uses homophonic writing and polyphonic writing and blends them together in this absolutely beautiful piece. Next, you have William Byrd. Byrd's an interesting guy. He was Catholic in England at a time when it was not cool to be a Catholic. So he wrote Mass settings, a 3-voice, a 4-voice, and a 5-voice setting of all 5 movements of the Mass Ordinary. You have the last movement, the Agnus Dei of the Mass for 5 voices. Absolutely gorgeous piece of music. But this was written for secret services because they had to hide their Catholicism in England at this time. And it's a complicated history, more than I can talk about here, but at times you just got in a little trouble. At times you were put to death. You didn't mess around with this. So it depends on where you are in England history. But secretly he's worshiping Catholic services. Publicly, he's writing for the Anglican Church, for the Church of England, and he's writing this grand music. He also is an important secular music composer, and he had publishing rights. By this time, we're publishing music, and that became a big deal. He was one of the first to do that. Gabrieli. Gabrieli doesn't fit neatly into the discussion because at a time when the church is saying we want less polyphony, he basically said, hey, that's not how we roll in Venice. In Venice, we like the polyphony. In fact, we're going to add more. St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, one of the most gorgeous cathedrals on the planet. The echo time here is about 4.3 seconds. And they would use this to their advantage with their polyphonic music. They wouldn't just write polyphony. They would write polyphony for multiple choirs, multiple groups of instruments, voices, or blended groups. They'd put some over here in this balcony. This is like set up like a cross, so the arms of the church are the sides of the cross, and then the altar is at the head of the cross, and you walk in under the feet of the cross. There's a group of musicians over here. There's a group of musicians over here. Sometimes he'd put them up here. Sometimes he'd put them in the back of the church. And he would have them play polyphonic music in multiple choirs and echo back and forth, up and down. It's an amazing sound, and it's better in that church than anywhere else, but it's pretty amazing music. You have a beautiful example here. Best in headphones, recommended highly. Martin Luther. Martin Luther, of course, you know, changes the face of Christianity forever. He nails his 95 Theses on the door at the Wittenberg Church. One of the things he wanted was people to take more of an active role in the church services. To that end, he wanted the services done in the local language, at least some of it, and he wanted them to sing hymns. He wanted the crowd to participate more. So he wrote a series of hymns, setting sacred text. Bach's going to come along in the next chapter. He takes a lot of Martin Luther's hymns and he reharmonizes them into modern harmony, what we still use today, tonic, dominant, axis harmony, stuff you studied back in chapter 1. And we still sing those hymns. We still use them in a lot of different Protestant churches, which is kind of cool. This is the introduction to Martin Luther's first hymn book, which is kind of interesting. There's a great link to a film here. And then we do conclude the chapter with secular music. There's a lot of different styles of secular music. We talk about Isak and the tenor lead. You can read about that in his Boss. Most importantly, though, is this next focus on form, right here, the madrigal. Remember, the focus on forms are always important. Spend a lot of time with them as you're going through your work. We talk about text painting. We talk about the densely polyphonic and creative nature of these pieces. We talk about how they were invented in Italy, the modern madrigal, and then they were printed. Musica Transalpina, music across the Alps. They print these things. They send them to England. They become even more popular in England. First, you have an Italian, Gesualdo. You can read all about him. It's pretty good. It's a telenovela is what it is. He catches his wife cheating with another guy. He kills them both, or maybe he has them killed. We don't know, but it sends him off into a Great Depression, and he writes some of the most gloriously depressing music you've ever heard in your life. You have a beautiful example in the books. The madrigal lightens up a lot as it gets to England. We use a lot more of the fa la 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 las, and it's drinking music, right? Come over to the house. We'll sing some madrigals tonight. We'll have a beer. It'll be really fun. And again, printing is critical to that. You can read all about that. You have a great example of an English madrigal by Tom Tompkins, To the Shady Woods. There you go. Now, there's instrumental music too. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go through, and you'll see some other videos about that if you're taking the fully online class. That's chapter 3. We're about to head to the Baroque period and some big changes. Stay tuned.